Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today we're looking at ILNP's new Fairy Forest collection. So this collection features a bunch of beautiful, shimmering, iridescent shades, a couple of magnetics, and all inspired by the ethereal magic of a fairy forest landscape. So as always, I will save my thoughts after comparisons. For now, let's get into the swatches. The first shade we have is Pixie Party, and this is described as a sheer pink base with an intense green shimmer and holographic flakes. So probably to no one's surprise, this one is my absolute favorite from this collection. It is just such a beautiful, magical, ethereal kind of polish that you know I am so obsessed with, especially for the spring. It gives the perfect dainty fairy vibes. I love it so much. So here on the first coat, it does give really good coverage, but is still very sheer, so you are gonna see some nail line. But on two coats, it does get covered up a little bit more. Obviously, there's still gonna be some squishiness to it because it is such a light and sheer shade. But I really think if you have shorter nails or if you just don't mind seeing your nail line, two coats is enough. You don't really need a third, but I am going to be layering a third just to build up those shimmer flaky particles even more against the base because it is just so pretty. There's something about the way the shimmer glimmers in this shade that I feel makes it look wet, which I know might sound weird, but I just think it is so beautiful. So yeah, here it is in 3 coats and in the sun. Next up we have Fairy Dust, and this one is described as a light purple with vivid orange shimmer and holographic flakes. So this is the other one that I was immediately drawn to when I first saw the collection. I just love these light, shimmery kind of shades, but I was a little surprised at the formula for this one because I found that it was more sheer on the first coat compared to Pixie Party. It definitely still is very easy to apply, but just as far as the opacity goes, this one I think looks a lot better on 3 coats than it does on 2 because there's just a lot more nail line than I would have liked after 2 coats. But you know, maybe you like how this looks on 2 coats, and if your nails are shorter, 2 coats is definitely passable, I think. But for me, building it up in 3 coats just allows that purple base to deepen up a little bit more, which lets that orange shimmer really pop, and I love that. This combination of orange shimmer and like a purple base is so beautiful to me. There's just something so warm and contrasty about it, and there's just a lot of sparkle going on in this shade, so definitely another favorite. The next shade we have is Up Above, and this one is described as a creamy blue crelly with gold to green iridescent flakes. So this is another one I'm super excited about because it is just so dainty and pretty. It does have a very light color. So here on the first coat, you can see just how sheer it is. And I didn't do the best job with application. It was a little bit patchy in some spots for me, but I think it self-levels really nicely. So you might be able to get away with this in 1 coat for just a sheer wash of color. But I definitely think it looks even more beautiful on 2 or even 3 coats just because the color builds up a little bit more. And you know how I feel about these really soft cornflower sky blue kind of shades, especially as a jelly formula. It's just so pretty. I also really love the way these iridescent flakes shift between that gold to green color combination because I feel like it kind of gives it an opalescent vibe, and they just really glow in this base, but it still has a very subtle sparkle, especially compared to the last 2 shimmery shades. Either way, I am still a huge fan of how soft and whimsical this shade is. It's so pretty. And here on 3 coats, you can still see some squishiness. I think it's a lot more noticeable in direct sunlight, but I still think it's so cute. It gives me Cinderella vibes. The next polish we have is Clover, and this one is a unique lime holographic jelly. So I generally really like this finish from ILNP. Their holographic jellies are just so pretty. And of course I will be comparing this one to their lime green from last summer's collection. But yeah, ultimately this one is just a color preference thing. I think here on the first coat, it leans a little more chartreuse than lime green. And I am just not the biggest fan of yellow leaning greens, and this one definitely toes the line. So I feel a little on the fence about it, but at the same time, I love how it looks in the bottle, and especially as a part of the lineup for this collection. It's just, once I put it on me, I don't love it so much. It still has a fantastic formula though. It just glides on your nail, so easy to work with and apply, self-levels really well. So if you really wanted to, you could wear this in one coat. But yeah, I think I'm just being a little picky about the specific shade of green that it is. But yeah, here it is, built up in 3 coats. Definitely very juicy, squishy looking with a decent amount of nail line, but that's kind of what you get with these jelly holographics. Next up we have Fawn, and this one is a brown with copper shimmer, silver and gold metallic flakes, and a bronze magnetic effect. This is just absolutely stunning. I, first of all, just love the name. Immediately reminds me of Bambi and any other kind of delicate little deer friends that you would make in the forest. But as far as the polish goes, it is just so pretty. It is a little bit sheer on the first coat, but it has really even coverage, and again, another amazing formula where it just glides on your nail like butter and self-levels really nicely. So once it is built up on 2 coats, I think it does look really nice. I think if your nails are short, you could get away with 2 coats because you don't really see a lot of nail line. There's just so much sparkle going on outside of the magnetic strip that it's pretty distracting, but maybe in the sunlight it's a little more obvious. So I did build this up in 3 coats just to show you how that looks, and the brown base definitely deepens up a little bit more. So I really love this on 3 coats just because it gives a little bit more contrast to that magnetic shimmer. So beautiful. So yeah, here it is in the sun, and here it is with the velvet effect. Are you kidding? That was the sound of my jaw dropping. Absolutely stunning. There are some magnetic polishes that velvetize better than others, and this is definitely one of them. It is so gorgeous. And last but certainly not least, we have Enchantment. This one is a rich teal with blue and green shimmer, holographic flakes, and a teal magnetic effect. So, as you are all aware, I am a seasonal wearer through and through, but this shade might make me change my ways because it is jaw-droppingly gorgeous. There's just something about this specific shade of teal that I adore so much. I think it is so beautiful, mesmerizing, enchanting, if you will, and I just can't get enough of it. So formula-wise, this one was definitely another amazing buttery smooth formula. On the first coat, it was a little bit sheer, so I definitely think this shade is worth building up in either 2 or 3 coats. Here on 2 coats, you can see the base is definitely very dark, so again, if you have shorter nails, you could just easily get away with 2 coats. But I saw a little bit of nail line peeking through, so I did end up doing a 3rd coat. And it does deepen the color ever so slightly, which I am a fan of. It just makes the perfect deep base for those metallic holographic flakes and the shimmer to really stand out. I truly feel speechless over how beautiful this is, and here it is with the velvet effect. Thankfully, it magnetizes beautifully, just like Fawn did. Normally, I prefer the velvet effect over the cat eye, but for this shade, I think I prefer the cat eye just because you see more of that teal base, but this still looks so perfect. Now moving on to comparisons, I have a couple of pink sparkly Mooncat shades that I want to show, starting with High Fructose, which is a very soft light pink that leans a little bit purple maybe compared to Pixie Party, and the shimmer is also a little different. And here is Winds of Fate too, which has a slightly deeper base, but it's still a little more purple leaning than Pixie Party. And again, the shimmer is more on the orange gold side, but it does shift to that green blue in very extreme angles. So definitely no dupes here. They are all very unique finishes. So it's hard to choose a favorite out of the three, but maybe it's tied between Pixie Party and High Fructose. I unfortunately don't have some of these other ILNP shades, but I had to show the website photos for comparison because they are pretty similar. This one is Opal Sunset, and it has a very similar effect. Maybe it's a little bit more yellow gold of a shimmer instead of green. And here is Pink Flamingo, which in this photo looks a lot warmer, but the next photo, they look nearly identical. So if you already have Pink Flamingo, maybe you don't need Pixie Party. Next for Fairy Dust, the closest that I had was Mooncat's Into the Wishing Well, which is from their fairy-themed collection last spring. And these two are definitely very similar in theory as far as having the purple base and a warm, glowy shimmer and the holographic sparkle, but they are very different on the nail. Mooncat has a much more buildable, crelly type of formula, while ILNP is a lot more sheer and almost jelly-like. And the most noticeable difference aside from that is the shimmer, where it's a lot stronger in Fairy Dust. So I'm a little bit more partial to that one. But here it is also next to Pool Party, or at least the website swatch photos. This one has more of a deeper blue base with a pink shimmer, so these are definitely not dupes. Next up for Up Above, I wanted to show this next to Mooncat's Acidwashed, which is the closest that I had to a blue jelly filled with iridescent flakies. But as you can see, Acidwashed is much more of a true sky blue type of shade, while Up Above has a little bit more of a cornflower, almost periwinkle leaning look. So I thought maybe it would be fun to try and recreate it. So I'm gonna be using Dimension Nails Blueberry Flax Milk, which is a sky blue, but I'm going to be layering it with Cirque's Morningtide, which is similar enough to Up Above, but a little bit darker. So I thought that using the Dimension Nails shade on top of this would lighten it up. So here's what that looks like. I also layered in Essie's Sparkle on top because I thought the flakies were the closest to ILNP's shade. Obviously, the base is a little bit deeper. Maybe if I did do another coat of Dimension Nails on top, it would lighten it up just a little bit more. But yeah, it's more or less the same, so I thought it was cute. Then for Clover, here it is next to Staycation from last year's Splashed collection. And these two are definitely very similar too. They're both these lime green jelly holographic polishes, but on the nail, they're not exact dupes. Clover is much more of a slightly darker jelly type of formula. I mean, Staycation is also a jelly, but there's just a lot more of those holographic flakies that cover up the nail line in Staycation. Next up for Fawn, I wanted to show this next to Cirque's Lyra, which came out earlier this year. This is their brown magnetic, but this is obviously a lot more cool toned and silvery compared to how warm and bronzy Fawn is. So here is Holo Taco's Fairy Tale, which is a little bit closer with that kind of gold magnetic shimmer, but the base is a lot darker and a little bit more cool toned as well. Here on the nail, this is 2 coats with the cat eye effect on each of them. Cirque's Lyra doesn't really stand out with just the cat eye effect because both Fawn and Fairy Tale have those extra holographic flakies. So those might be more similar in terms of what's inside of them, but the colors are very different. And lastly, for Enchantment, I wanted to show this next to Cirque's Delphinus, which also came out earlier this year. This one does have a really deep teal kind of jelly base, but the magnetic shimmer is very different than what's in Enchantment. And I also wanted to show it next to Mooncat's Weeping Willow from the recent Folktale collection. This one is definitely more of a true green base compared to the teal base in Enchantment, but the shimmer is a lot closer. So here on the nail, you can definitely see the differences a little bit better and also the similarities. I feel like Enchantment is a perfect kind of mix between both Delphinus and Weeping Willow with a little bit more sparkle even, so it's my favorite of the three. I do also have these two other Mooncat comparisons. We have Sunken Splendor, which is this kind of seafoamy green with a really beautiful gold magnetic shimmer. There's also reflective glitter in here too that I guess makes it pretty sparkly. And also Mooncat's Poseidon's Prize, which is like the blue version, more or less. And even though this one is a little bit more of a brighter blue, in certain angles, there's this green gold shimmer that pops. Like, I have never seen that before. So I was kind of excited, thinking it might be similar, but once it's on the nail, you can, again, see the differences pretty obviously. Sunken Splendor is just a lot more green leaning, Poseidon's Prize is a lot more blue, and Enchantment just steals the show. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons for ILNP's Fairy Forest collection. I'd love to know what you all think about their second spring release this year, because I think it's just so beautiful. I mean, probably to no one's surprise, especially if you watched my spring favorites video, you know that I absolutely adore and gravitate towards these really iridescent, glowy, shimmery kind of shades this time of year. So I think they are just so sparkly and beautiful. I just love the color scheme of this lineup as well, even with the slightly darker colors. I would say Enchantment is probably like the actual dark color, but they are just so pretty to me. And I definitely prefer this over their first spring release, because as much as I thought those colors were really cute, you know, with the speckled finish, the bright pastel base, they just felt very much like Easter focused, like for me personally. So I didn't really gravitate towards them outside of around like Easter weekend, but these are definitely shades that I would be wearing like all the time throughout spring. So I absolutely love them, but you probably already knew that. And I'm just curious to know what your thoughts are on these. And I also am kind of curious to know what you think about how these compare to Mooncat's Lost in a Folktale collection, which just came out a couple of months ago, because I thought it was so interesting. I mean, I always think it's interesting to see when brands release collections that have like the same theme, because they just adapt them so differently sometimes. And I mean, obviously, we all know that ILNP did not copy Mooncat. Like, they work on collections months out in advance. So I don't think there's any kind of like shade around that or anything. But, you know, I did immediately, when I first saw this release, I was like, oh, okay, that's like, you know, kind of similar to Mooncat's collection, but they are very different feels at the same time. Like, overall, even though Mooncat's collection did have a few light shades that I would wear in the spring, I think I would just overall classify that whole collection as like a more suitable fall collection, because I at least would be more likely to wear lighter shades in the fall as opposed to wearing darker shades in the spring. So, you know, it just comes down to personal preference, like always. So I'm just curious to know how you feel about this lineup, or if you like Mooncats more when it comes to that kind of fairy, you know, theme or whatever, because I am just looking at it as like having the best of both worlds, where this is my ideal kind of fairy collection for the spring, but then I can go to Mooncat's collection for later in the year when I want like that more mysterious, mystical woodland vibe, you know? So overall, I think they're just all amazing. But let me know any and all thoughts that you have down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.